This is the end, beautiful friends. We have reached the end of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. Far more emotional than I expected now that Takahashi is no longer with us. The anime dragged its feet by giving us two filler arcs, the Seal of Orichalcos and the Kaiba Court Grand Prix. Because this arc isn't about the card games so much, we're going back to our roots a little bit by focusing on Egyptian mythology. But first we have a story about how Grandpa Moto found the Millennium Puzzle. To put it as shortly as possible, Grandpa was betrayed by the bandits he was working with, and surely would have died were it not for the pharaoh coming to his rescue. The implication is that the pharaoh knew that this is when it was finally time for him to be set free. So we cut back to the present day, and Yugi has just gotten all three Egyptian god cards. Although if you go by the anime, they were stolen and he had to get them back because there would be no tension if he had the god cards on hand to bail him out. Even though in the actual game, a god deck is very beatable. Trust me, I know from experience. The conversation turns interesting as Grandpa reveals he knows the pharaoh's soul has been living inside Yugi all this time, and in a sense apologizes to him for setting this path upon him. That night, Yugi is woken by his other self. Dark Yugi is unsure of what to do. He knows who he is, but what will it mean when he uncovers his memories? Will he lose the new memories he's gained? Yugi assures him that won't be the case. Of course, Yugi can't rest easily as some random nobody steals the god cards. The anime changes to Rex and Weevil because I guess they couldn't get enough of those two. But Yugi is bailed out by Dark Bakura. Why does he want the pharaoh's memories to be uncovered? Well, at long last, we're going to find out exactly what Dark Bakura wants out of all this. What Yugi gains out of this is when the door is open, it will open to the afterlife, which gives Yugi an idea of what will happen to his other self. Of course, Dark Bakura has his own reasons and doesn't divulge the full story. Yugi is naturally suspicious, but has no real choice but to accept the Millennium Eye. Yugi has 4 out of 7 items. Come to think of it, they haven't shown the Millennium Scale yet, have they? So after school, the gang heads to the museum where they meet this guy named Bobasa, who somehow has the remaining Millennium items glued to his stomach. Isn't that random and convenient? Yeah, Shadi apparently sent him to keep an eye on Yugi, but even so, this is a huge narrative cop-out. But Takahashi had to rush the final arc due to his declining health and declining sales. So the gang heads inside where Anzu gives Dark Yugi a pendant. A pendant that's going to be very important. Finally, Dark Yugi presents the god cards to the slab, and memories begin to flood back to him, and he is transported out of the Millennium Puzzle. I have to admit, didn't see that coming. Dark Yugi finds himself in ancient Egypt surrounded by people who resemble the people he knows from the present. Reincarnation is the obvious answer here. We get some insight into how they dealt with the Shadow Games and how Duel Monsters was basically born. Since we're on pre-Seto, I should mention that Kaiba has no role in this arc in the manga, but the anime includes him because he was such a major character it would have been odd if he was absent for the final story. At least that's my guess. Bobasa tells the gang that the pharaoh must relive his death and how he ended up in the puzzle. Oh boy, this is going dark. But there is a way for Yugi's friends to journey there and help out the pharaoh in his time of need. Back in the memory world, Isis tells everyone a dark evil is occurring here when Thief King Bakura shows up. So Dark Bakura is apparently unaware of what's going on here, even though this is his plan, so okay, I can't get lost just yet. Oh wow, they're actually using the scales. It judges a person's soul. And everyone's free to go in except for Bakura because of the Dark Bakura soul. But he's okay with that because his shadow is still in the puzzle. Speaking of which, Bakura wasn't in any of the anime filler arcs. I really don't think the anime team liked him very much. Must be why he's crying in this panel. So Yugi and his friends enter his mind to find Dark Yugi. Through the duel of Thief King Bakura, we learn some interesting tidbits, such as how Duel Monsters was played in ancient Egypt. The Ka, forgive me if I pronounced that wrong, that goes into a person's soul, and that it was the pharaoh's father who created the Millennium items. Dark Yugi doesn't care so much about Bakura, but he finally remembers his father. An image of him in an absolutely bone-chilling moment tells Thief King Bakura that when he's done laying his father back to rest, he's going to destroy him. The pharaoh questions why his father made the Millennium items if they all have a taint of evil, but he does remember his father's love for him. When the pharaoh returns to the battle, he manages to summon Obelisk. Thief King Bakura... Boy, this is getting confusing attacks anyway.
Oh, just wait until Season 5 when there's 3 of me running around. Even the fans have trouble keeping up with that one.
Bakura takes the time to run away, vowing that next time it'll be different, as this will be the end of the Pharaoh dynasty. Back to Yugi and his friends, Bobasa tells them that their role is to find the Pharaoh's true name. Boy, I bet 4 kids really regret saying his name was Yami. Why would his name be King Dark? Do you not think of these things, 4 kids? Dark Bakura is watching, so there's 3 of him running around now. No kidding. I'm having a hard time keeping up already. Back in Memory World, Mahad blames himself for the defilement, but Dark Yugi doesn't blame him. In fact, Mahad is his most trusted servant. Interesting fact. Meanwhile, Priest Seto and Akainen discuss how to fight Bakura. Seto wants to capture commoners and develop their Ka, despite the obvious moral problems of this, and yep, he is Kaiba's past self, alright. A nice quiet moment follows as the pharaoh looks at the pendant Anzu gave him. 3 days later, the pharaoh proceeds to humble Seto with Kuribo. Well, I hate to say it, but the betrayal arc kinda got cut short, and we'll get into that later. We meet another character, Mahado's apprentice Mana. Gee, I wonder who she's going to become. Mahad confronts Bakura in the tomb, intending to sacrifice himself. Mahado calls forth his spirit. Yep, pretty obvious who that is now. Sure enough, Mahado dies, but his spirit becomes the Dark Magician. Meanwhile, Yugi and the others try to find Dark Yugi. Honda continues his tradition of just being there, while Jinochi doesn't really have much going for him, as his arc was finished in Battle City. But through the power of friendship, they're able to access the Memory World because that's just how things are done. Meanwhile, tears are shed for Mahado, and Dark Yugi gives permission for Seto to play his truce, but only to search for Bakura and no one else. Yugi and the others find they cannot speak or be heard by anyone in the Memory World. As Priest Seto begins his search, he quickly breaks his promise to not target civilians, and says to capture anyone who opposes them. This is getting kinda eerie. But there are some hints dropped about the White Dragon. Foreshadowing. Here we meet Kasara, who is being prejudiced against because she has pale skin compared to the others. Sadly, racism goes pretty far back. Priest Seto comes to her defense, showing some redeeming quality, like Kaiba. He senses an incredible amount of Ka in her. But Seto intends to torture civilians to get the Ka that can rival God. Oh boy, this is getting dark. Bakura goes on a spree, knocking out Akiden. But he got the Ka he needed, but Dark Yugi is in pursuit. Bakura begins a game of how many civilians can the pharaoh save from Diabound. Dark Yugi does his best, but Bakura begins to get the upper hand. This is some really dark stuff. Bakura is basically committing genocide. Dark Yugi is almost done in, but the priests come to his aid just in time. But even with their aid, it's no use. When just then Yugi and his friends are able to reach him because a part of him is still connected to Yugi. Yeah, I guess, but whatever. This allows the pharaoh to summon Ra. So, well, okay, Bakura is seemingly done for, but Akarin's dark self visits him. Well, this is a bad omen. Dark Yugi greets his friends, while Dark Bakura reflects that the sequence of events has changed. But it's alright, Dark Necrophage is about to make his move. Basically, the pharaoh is meant to die in this battle, and his soul shattered and put into the Millennium Puzzle, but would be awakened when Yugi solved it 3,000 years later. But we are told the stakes to this fight. If the darkness wins this time, then it will be unleashed onto the modern world. And we learn its name, Zorc. Zorc. Remember him from back in chapter 50 or something? Zorc rewinds time because, yeah, why not? Dark Bakura confronts Yugi and company. This is getting confusing, referring to 3 of them. But he reveals exactly why he was doing what he did this whole series. It was all to resurrect Zorc. If Zorc wins this time, he wins for good, as now the pharaoh cannot trap him in the Millennium Puzzle. So both Yugis are fighting the Bakura of their time. Dark Bakura reveals that he is a part of Zorc. Okay, sure. And morphs his arm into a duel disc. Wow, that's grotesque. Yugi and Jinochi summon duel discs to challenge Dark Bakura, and Honda and Anzu do as well, even though they are not duelists, which just highlights how little Honda has had to do. Jinochi duels first, and well, it doesn't go too well. Meanwhile, the pharaoh is plunged into a dark abyss as darkness swallows him whole. We get a brief look at the origin of Millennium items, but it feels very quick. Thief King Bakura is assembling the Millennium items. As the pharaoh's subjects debate what to do next, Seto learns that Kasara is awake. Down in the prison, they try to awaken Kasara's Ka. She doesn't seem to be able to, so Seto steps in to save her, but then the blue-eyes white dragon emerges. This weird-looking guy tells Seto that they can make the white dragon his as long as they sacrifice Kasara, but Seto refuses to do so. Meanwhile, the pharaoh awakens, rescued by a mysterious benefactor, and in due time the pharaoh survives. Sento contemplates his actions, and upon learning the pharaoh is alive, he laughs. Was this supposed to set up the betrayal arc? I mean, we all know that didn't happen, so yeah. Dark Yugi doesn't waste any time. He decides to go to the village Bakura is at for the final battle. For whatever reason, the duel between Jinochi and Dark Bakura was interrupted. Why? I don't know. Yugi has clearly played RPGs as he finds information on where to go next at a bar. The pharaoh confronts Thief King Bakura, but is too weakened to fight properly. But the Dark Magician appears to aid him and turns the tide single-handedly because that's what the Dark Magician does. Thief Bakura is able to get another Millennium item and is about to destroy the Dark Magician when Mana is able to somehow rescue him. I guess she learned how to do that. She projects herself as the Dark Magician Girl. So the battle rages on, and I must admit I'm losing interest as I feel it's wearing as welcome, and it really needs to wrap up soon. Dark Magician finally lands the finishing blow, but through the backup plan, because every good villain has one in case their main plan fails, somehow Dark Bakura gets rid of his past self and takes over as the main bad guy. Sure, why not? Then we see the big twist. This whole world is Dark Yugi and Dark Bakura essentially replaying the RPG game they did back in Volumes 6 and 7. Yeah, that kinda came out of nowhere. So they've been playing this game the whole time, even though we saw Dark Yugi get sucked into the world of his memories, but they're still in the museum and... you know what? Screw it. I'm just not going to think about it too much. Dark Bakura summons the evil god Zorc to the field. Unfortunately, a lot of the drama is undercut because his second head is basically a giant penis. Now, I know the reason is because Takahashi was high on hospital meds when designing Zorc, but even so. The key for Dark Yugi to win is for Yugi and his friends to find his true name. Bobasa changes into a new form. With the Millennium items back in the stone tablet, he can lead Yugi to the pharaoh's true name. And now the final battle begins. And the word final never sounded so terrifying. The Hasan, who is the true name of Babosa, leads them to the tomb. So let's clarify, we have 3 Yugis: Dark Yugi, who is playing the RPG, Yugi, who is trying to find his other self's true name, and the nameless Pharaoh, who is a player in the game, and we have 3 Bakuras. Dark Bakura, who is playing opposite Dark Yugi, his shadow soul that he placed in the Millennium Puzzle, and his past thief self. Keeping up so far? But Dark Bakura isn't worried, as his shadow self will stop Yugi and friends from learning the Pharaoh's name. Okay, I really don't know how to refer to these to differ them. What is good is that we see Yugi coming into his own, separate from his other self. Meanwhile, the Pharaoh's father comes to his son's rescue. Yeah, this is kind of the thing we have going now. Bunch of twists and magical rescues. I will admit the pacing is great and fast as we go back and forth between the Pharaoh's battle with Zorc and Yugi and friends' quest for the Pharaoh's name. So now the duel between Shadow and Bakura will resume, but Yugi will step up and finish it. Yugi pulls out some new cards, and some of those are cards I use in Master Duel. It's a great showing for Yugi as it proves he's grown into a duelist in his own right without his other self. And though Bakura is able to momentarily get the upper hand, Yugi stands victorious. Dark Bakura tries to destroy the tomb they're in, but Yugi is determined to get the Pharaoh's name regardless, and now the true final battle begins. More family twists abound. The priest corrupted by Bakura is Seto's father. I think I forgot to mention that. But the battle rages, and we get a rather awesome moment where Exodia is summoned. That was pretty great. But even Exodia can't destroy Zorc. The Pharaoh's allies have fallen one by one, but the Pharaoh will not give up, while Zorc taunts that shadows are born in humans. The Pharaoh stands firm that he will not give up, but it all seems lost when Yugi and his friends arrive to save the day. Summoning their monsters, we see Jinochi did get Red Eyes back. How very nice. Does that mean he won the duel between him and Yugi? But regardless, it's not enough. But Hazen, who is revealed to be shoddy, shields the group from Zorc's attack. They must help the Pharaoh see his true name. Anzo gets the idea to use their memories to put the hieroglyphs of the Pharaoh's name on the pendant she gave him. Now that is a good setup, though it's pretty touch and go. The name is engraved on the pendant, and we find at last what the Pharaoh's name is.
Atem.
Atem summons the 3 gods, and he fuses them together into the creator of light, Haleki, which is a card that hasn't gotten a major release outside Japan. They really should release it worldwide. In a blinding flash of light, Zorc is vanished. That was pretty awesome. The battle is over, and there's a sad moment where they realize that Atem is no longer Yugi. He has his own name now. From here, we get a very rushed, condensed version of the Seto portrays the Pharaoh arc that's been set up since Battle City, as well as a very rushed origin of the Blue Eyes White Dragon that ends with Kasara saving Seto's soul from his evil father. So, yeah, that happened. I admit, though, that this was Takahashi's biggest regret, that he had to rush this plot point. Atem fades away from the world of memory, leaving Seto as the Pharaoh in his place. Finally, we return to the tabletop game. Bakura is finally free of his dark half, and now only one task remains, the trial of the Pharaoh. The gang meets up with the Istars, and now the Pharaoh's soul must be put to rest. But Merrick reveals that before Atem can rest, Yugi must defeat him in a duel. Some quiet moments follow which are appreciated. Eventually they arrive at the stone slab, and the 2 Yugi split into 2, and now the final duel begins. Atem wants to join the afterlife, but he will not go down quietly. The 2 Yugis are able to have a great duel with pretty good combos. Eventually both are down to their last card. and Atem summons Osiris to the field. But the card Yugi put in the golden sarcophagus is Monster Reborn, which is a message from Yugi to Atem that the dead should not stay in this world. Atem accepts that Yugi has surpassed him at last. Yugi's hands shake as he knows what's about to happen, but Atem encourages him to go through with it. Thus the final blow is made and Atem has lost. Yugi falls to his knees sobbing, but Atem gives his partner one last comfort. Atem tells Yugi he has a strength no one else has, the strength of kindness. No longer the other Yugi, Atem is free, and Yugi is the only Yugi in the world. Atem speaks his name to the eye, and the door to the afterlife opens. He prepares to leave, but his friends call out to him. They don't want him to go, but Jinochi, in an incredible bit of character growth, assures them that he has to. No matter how many years pass, they will always be friends. With one final thumbs up, Atem does not look back as he walks into the light. The slab breaks and the Millennium Islands fall into the chasm. Yugi and friends make it out as the tomb collapses. Thus, in one final moment, we are told the message of this ending. Atem's story has ended in light, but Yugi's story has just begun, and that is the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! For 7 long years, I've traveled with Yu-Gi-Oh! I think I've been able to draw the themes I've wanted to express, but as I end the series, my main concern is whether I've transmitted my message to the readers. From the moment Yugi put together the Millennium Puzzle, the other self appeared in his heart. The time needed to explore 2 main characters turned this into a long series. In our daily life, we never get to see ourselves except by standing in front of a mirror, but even a mirror won't reflect our hearts. The main characters of this work won the courage and strength of will to face each other's hearts. As we go about our lives, we touch people, we see people, and interact with them, and in doing so we feel and think many things. Sometimes we make others happy, sometimes we hurt them, we sympathize, and we disagree. In the midst of this, we learn that people's thoughts and feelings are not a one-way street. You may say that's something very basic and natural, but what I wanted to draw and write in this work was just that interaction between people. In order to do that, I used games. The games that the characters played were not played facing monitors, but facing other people. The opponents they played were the mirrors that reflected their hearts. In a basic sense, they fought each other's spirits. Because this was a manga, it was deeply colored by the battle between good and evil. But I think the basis of the game was to clarify what lies between people. I think this was the reason the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game became so successful all over the world. In my mind, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been completed, but throughout the world many people are taking my work and the cards in their hands. In gratitude for that, I would like to prolong the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! For just a little while longer. I borrow the end of this book to thank all of those who have participated in this world. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Kazuki Takahashi, April 14th, 2004. I think this message carries a different meaning now that Takahashi is gone. But no one's ever really gone, are they? As long as people are playing, reading, or watching Yu-Gi-Oh!, Kazuki Takahashi will live forever. Atem completed his character arc by learning how to lose, and Yugi has stepped into his own man, out of the shadow of his other self. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is definitely a special series to me, as I've made a lot of friends through it, and as an avid gamer, I appreciate the message. We are making connections through the emotions, the feelings we share. If you're watching this video to the end, I can only say thank you. Thank you, Takahashi, for giving the world Yu-Gi-Oh! Takahashi's story may have ended, but you, the one watching this video, your story has just begun, so make it a good one.